Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. My name is Amy. I am the events manager here at Tempo. Today, we're going to show you some key steps to help you get started with Tempo Timesheets. With that, let's get started. A little bit about us. Tempo acquired ALMWorks and Roadmonk last year, and now we have 3 product lines. As you may already know, Tempo Timesheets, Tempo Planner, and Cost Tracker can help you better manage capacity and cost. Structure for Jira and Structure.Gantt allow you to visualize, track, and manage projects across teams. Roadmonk is a communication tool for all departments to gain high-level visibility and alignment on projects. So with this solution suite, we are able to provide our customers with even more visibility and control, so you can easily move between strategy and daily execution, make informed decisions, and share progress with all stakeholders. So we have an excellent lineup today. Without further ado, I'm passing this to Edna Kruger, our learning content specialist, to introduce herself. Edna.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, welcome to our webinar. As Amy said, I'm a learning content specialist here at the Expert and Learning team. I've been at Tempo for just over 4 years now, and my main focus is creating how-to videos on YouTube channel. And I also create other training and learning content, including doing the occasional webinar. So I'll pass it to my teammate, Dua.
Thank you, Edna. My name is Dua. I'm the Training and Learning Program Manager here at Tempo. I'm relatively more recent here at Tempo, but my main focus is maximizing the value that you're getting out of these sessions. So I'm definitely looking forward to all of the feedback that we're going to get from everyone attending today, and hopefully you'll be able to attend more of our sessions. For answering questions, we do have some of our colleagues also. They're going to be answering questions in the chat. Susan Wu, who's a product expert, Carolyn French, the Director of Customer Success, and also Mayank will be joining us in the last half hour to answer some questions as well. He's the senior product owner. With that, we can go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn my camera off, so less distractions. The main goal of today's session is going to be giving you the best way to get started when using Tempo Timesheets in cloud. Keep in mind that although we're not getting into too much detail in this session, we're here to put you on the right path, so we will follow up with lots of helpful links that will allow you to continue your journey and get as much detail as you need. We will begin today's session with discussing why you would want to track time in the first place, as this impacts the way that you'll set up Tempo Timesheets. Afterwards, we're going to show you a few of the most popular reports Tempo has to offer before going into steps on how to roll out Tempo. We'll show you some more advanced features like Tempo accounts, and we'll tackle some common objections to time tracking that I'm sure you're going to hear. Before covering where to go next to complete your rollout. And we're going to finish today's session with a quick Q&A at the very end. With that, let's go ahead and answer that first question. Why are you even tracking time? Having a good understanding of the needs of your organization will make setup much easier and save you a lot of time down the line. Think about your end goal when you're starting out. That will impact how you set up and how you use Tempo. You should understand what you want from tracking and logging time in order to get the right data to run reports on. And definitely, as it goes when taking projects like this, it's important to figure out who your stakeholders are at the very beginning, especially when you're working with larger teams. And we always recommend to just over-communicate, and you can use Tempo's resources for that, like the Help Center and our YouTube channel, to kind of manage this change a little bit better. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and launch our first poll of the day. So we want to get your answers for that same question. Why is your organization tracking time? Some of you might be tracking time to invoice customers. Some of you might want to just understand where your time is being spent, and that will help you better utilize it. Some of you will have R&D grant applications, and you want to figure out how much time you're going to be spending. And for a lot of you, it might be a legal requirement as well. So mostly, a lot of you are here to understand where their time is being spent and definitely think about it in a different way and make informed decisions on that. Invoice customers, always a big reason to track time. A lot of you have legal requirements. All right, so as we've seen from that poll, a lot of you are tracking time to better utilize how your teams are using it, how you're using that time to get to your team goals and so on. Some of you may even progress to not only measuring past time, but planning upcoming time and scheduling tasks in order to optimize work that way. A few also want to understand how much capitalized expenses you have or even the cost of projects. Whatever the reason or the stage you're at, it's important for you to understand why you're tracking time. That will definitely help you with setting up and rolling out Tempo. Okay, on that note, I want to just show you, because we are thinking of the end goal at the very beginning, I want to show you some of the reports that you can get from all of this data that you're collecting. A few reporting tips that I'm going to share with you. One of the most powerful and flexible parts of Tempo Timesheets is the log time report. You can run reports in Tempo to get very flexible data insights. I do recommend, like I said just a minute ago, not to wait until months after you've rolled out Tempo to experiment with your reports and look at what you can get from them. Take a look now and plan how you can leverage your JIRA projects and issues, as well as Tempo concepts like Tempo teams and accounts to get some more beautiful data to interpret. We've seen that organizations that think through how to make this as easy for their users as possible are more likely to achieve success. I would start by gathering stakeholders, figuring out what they need out of the system, and even for your team leads, I would have them rethink what they would like to see about their teams and how they can leverage that information. So a few questions that that the log time report can help you answer. For example, it can help you assess and adjust your team's activities, where you spend your time. Obviously, nobody likes to be micromanaged. Nobody likes to do the micromanaging. But with timesheets, logging time will become a part of the routine of working on JIRA issues and logging time against them. And then team leads can use this data to back decisions and shuffle around team members. For example, you can decide if you need to maybe expand your team to take on more work. An example that comes to mind is a customer who is a software delivery team. And what they wanted to achieve is they wanted to make sure that the majority of their time was spent delivering projects to their customers. Their team still had to help out with pre-sales, but it was important for them to report on log time in those pre-sales projects versus the billable projects to make sure that they were still focused on their priorities and other priorities weren't being added in unknowingly. That was a lot of talk, but I am actually going to show you or demo our tool. So I'm going to go ahead and move us to our demo quickly. So what you're looking at, I'm in a JIRA instance right now, and I'm actually going to access Tempo. So I'm going to go ahead and click that apps menu. It's going to take me to Tempo. And usually you'll start off on timesheets. We are going to take a look at this later on during this session, but I'm going to move to reports using that left-hand menu. And in reports, you might see some saved reports. Now, I've already created all of these and saved them. I will point out how you can as well, but it's a good idea to just have a bunch of these saved. It's a good starting point for you to utilize them. The one I'm looking at right now, or the one that I want to highlight for you, is the Team Monthly Projects report. I'm just going to access that report. I'm going to walk you through it very quickly. So the very first thing that you'll see here is I'm filtering by a specific team. So I'm just looking at this team right here, and you'll see that there's lots of options to filter by. So definitely worth experimenting with once you get started. I'm also grouping by the user and issue. So it helps me take a look at more at the team members and the issues that they're working on. Another thing that you'll see here at the top bar is the overview option. And this determines what exactly I'm looking at. So I'm looking at their required time, their utilization, their log time. Maybe I want to look at their planned time, so I can always toggle that on. Really depends on what you're looking to get from this report. Here you'll see that my team hasn't really planned a lot of time yet, but again, we're at the very beginning of the month and I'm looking at October. If you're looking to plan time at a team level, you will have to use one of our other apps called the Tempo Planner. But maybe like I said, I'm looking at this current month and there's not really a lot of activity there yet. Maybe I want to look at a different time period. I can go into the time period option here and I can adjust it manually, or if I want, I can set up a dynamic time period. So what I have set up right now is a current month. So whenever I go in here, I'm going to see this current month and the data associated with it. If I want, I can change that to the last month if that's more relevant to my work, and apply. I'm going to keep it as is for now. Once it looks good, I'm seeing the data that I'm expecting to see, it looks useful, I can go ahead and save my report, and that's going to add it to that saved report tab that you just saw. A few other things that I can do with my report once I'm done with it, once I'm done organizing it, I can export it. So we've got a couple of exporting options. For example, this PDF summary gives you this exact view of the report, so you can share it. And then we also have this new sharing option where you can share it with others in the organization. A note here is that you want to make sure that they have the correct permissions to view the data. Okay, and that's the first report that I wanted to show you. I am going to go back to my saved reports and show you a second type of report really quickly. So if I go back to reports, another useful type of report is my billable projects. So I can actually create a report just like this one. I'm filtering by projects, but I can filter by other criteria. Like, for example, if you want to look at all of the hours that you've done for a specific customer, you can do that as well. I'm grouping by the project and the issue. And this gives me an overview of how much time I've logged to this specific project. Very easy from this point to create an invoice for a customer and keep track of how many hours we're spending on these projects. We are going to take a look at one more type of report, but Edna's going to actually walk us through that one once we get to that point. I'm going to take us back to our slides. And we've got one more poll that we want to ask you, a quick question, and this will give us a little bit of insight about where you are in your journey. So mostly we've got people who have organizations who have been using Tempo for less than 6 months. So this is definitely the correct place to get started. For everyone else, I'm assuming you've got some burning questions that you want to ask. So hopefully you're getting the chance to ask those in the Q&A section. And we'll definitely answer a few of them at the very end. Very interesting to see cloud versus data center as well. Okay, perfect. Thank you for all those answers. They will definitely help us adjust our content. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Edna, who will walk us through how to actually roll out Tempo.
Great, thank you, Dua. I'm going to share my screen here. So the things that you see on this slide are things that you need to consider when you're starting out with timesheets. And even if you've had timesheets for a while, you may want to go back and maybe make some updates if that's possible. So I'm going to keep the information at a pretty high level here since there's a lot to cover, but you can always ask questions in the Q&A panel as we have there. So I will start off with a few tips about rolling out Tempo to your organization. So a good thing to set up for Tempo is actually first in Jira, and that's to really make the best use of your user groups for managing Tempo permissions. So for example, you could create like one Jira group for all the Tempo users for basic access to Tempo, and then make other Jira groups for, like, say, your Tempo admins or managers who maybe need to have extra permissions so that they can have access to all the data and manage time for their teams and run Tempo at your organization. It's all about really getting the right permissions to the right people. So another best practice is when you install Tempo Timesheets, you can choose to give access to maybe only a few key people at first, Again, controlling the access to Tempo with Jira user groups and Tempo permissions. And this could be a good strategy for a larger company. Stakeholders can test out timesheets and set it up properly first. And then when they're ready, they can roll it out to the rest of the company, who can then be onboarded and start using timesheets. So in order to do this, you need to know a little bit about Tempo permissions. And these are really kind of like the key for your employees to have a good experience with Tempo. So when everybody has the right access that they need, it's more efficient and less frustrating to get work done. So there are 3 types of permissions that Tempo uses: Jira Global, Jira Project, and our own Tempo team permissions. So, but better than talking about them, let's look at them where they are here in Tempo. So I've got my instance set up here. And an easy way to find all these permissions from Tempo itself are to go on this permission overview. So here you have the global, project, and team. So for the global permissions, and I can click here to go directly to them, which is great. You see all the ones that say Tempo on them. That's what Tempo adds to Jira when it's installed. So an important one is the Tempo Timesheets access one, and this is how you can control who in your company has access to Tempo using the Jira the Jira user groups there. Another important one is the person or group of people that you give the Tempo administrator permissions to, and these people will be able to control and manage Tempo in your company. So let's go back to Tempo here and look at project permissions. And these are managed through permission schemes. And I have this one here that most of my projects are set up in. So if you go all the way down to the bottom here with the time tracking permissions. So these are the ones that Jira already has, and Tempo uses all of these. But Tempo also adds its own log work for others, set billable hours. So for those you are invoicing on, say, projects that you're working on, this is a good one to set. View all work logs and view issue hours. And that's for Tempo, project, and team. So for teams, and you can click there, these are all the related to Tempo teams, not Jira teams, and these relate to each team has its own permissions. So for example, these are all the teams that I have here on my instance. You can create Tempo teams for a lot of different reasons. Having employees in smaller groups makes it easy to manage their work logs. And another reason you may want to use teams is for the timesheet approval process. So employees need to be in teams to have their timesheets reviewed and approved by their team leads and managers. So here we've got, for different reasons, the green team, for example, is a project-based team. Let's just open it up and look at here. So you have like developers, UX designers, QA, learning content developer, and the team lead. And just to note that these little colorful boxes here are skills. And if you have Tempo Planner installed, you can set up skills to help you plan. Like when you're planning, you're looking for somebody with certain skills for project planning, you can add them there. And one great thing also that relates to the Jira user groups is adding members in bulk. So if you have Jira user groups set up, say, all my Tempo admins, for example, I can really quickly just create my team using all the people in this group, which I won't do that right now. But importantly, you want to look at the permissions for the group, which I was talking about before. So these are per team. By default, you have the team lead and membership permission roles. So team lead, you can see you've got everything. And you can, just to mention that the plans permissions you see here are because I have Tempo Planner installed, but the ones for timesheets are the ones for the work log. So have everything if you're a team lead. If you're a member, usually you don't give members permissions. Like, for example, you don't want them to see each other's work logs, but it's totally up to you what you want to do in your company. But the great thing about permission roles is that you can create your own custom one over here. So for example, I have this one here. So John Steele can approve timesheets for his team members. So he's kind of like a backup team lead. And that's really great to be able to create your own. And these ones here are ghosted. So they apply to this team, but they're actually set at sort of the company-wide level. So if you go into settings here and down to permission roles, I have a few of these created here. So for example, if you're the CFO or maybe somebody in HR and you want to be able to view work logs of all employees across the whole company, you can create a permission role for that. That includes all resources. So you would set that to full. Or if, say, you just want multiple teams, you could restrict it to, say, 5 or 6 teams that you want to see. So the great thing is that you don't have to go into each team and set this permission for everyone. You set it right here and everything is ready to go. So that saves you a lot of time, as you can imagine. So after that, let's go back to our teams, and I'm going to go into the green team, and I'm going to look at timesheet approvals. So timesheet approvals, you don't need to use them in your company, but if you do, your team members need to be in teams. Your employees need to be in teams. Why would you want to use them? Well, it does basically give you more control over how the time is managed in your company, and because it's reviewed and approved by team leads and managers. So this will probably give you more accurate data later on within your log time reports. So as you see here, Saul has submitted his timesheet. He's waiting for the reviewer to approve it. Beverly still has to submit it, and Amy and Josephine have already submitted and had their timesheets approved. So this is all controlled with the timesheet periods, and these you can configure in the settings. And if I go down to period configuration, so here you set up your basic timesheet periods that you want, and importantly, this is the how frequently you want your approvals to be run. So for example, you can do it monthly or weekly. We often find monthly is enough, since there is a bit of overhead with everybody submitting their timesheets and having them approved. So, but it's up to you what works for your company. You can also do things like use the scheduler to send reminders to people before the time period's over that they need to submit their timesheets, or even have the scheduler automatically close the time period when you want. But those are all options that you can use, but you don't need to. So there's a bit of flexibility there. So one more thing I just want to show you. So when here we are in my work. So once everybody's logged their time for the time period, you can go up here and submit your timesheet when it's ready to submit. I'm a few hours behind there, but you can click submit, and that goes to the team lead, who will then review it and hopefully approve it. And you see this is the timesheet period that's still open, so you wouldn't submit till that's ready. So one more thing to look at for logging time to non-work related things is internal issues. And these are issues that you can create yourself and then add them to Tempo. And they're for things like sick time, vacation, lunar travel, if you were doing that kind of activities, team building, whatever you want for your company, like to track non-work related stuff. So the reason that they show up in this panel is because I have them configured in my internal issues up here. So this is a really convenient way if you've got, say, a bunch of different projects you want to pull issues from. When you bring them in here and add them, it makes them available to everybody in the company, and everybody can log time to them. So that makes it really convenient. But say if you need more privacy, you can just create a simple JIRA project with all the issues and maybe even a separate JIRA permission scheme. And that way you can control who has access to it. And you do not add them to this so that they're not available for everybody. So that's kind of a way of controlling how you're using internal issues in your company. One other way, and I will go into accounts later, but one other way is to actually create what are called internal type accounts. So if I show you here, so these, maybe you have like teams in your company who want to have their own type of internal issues they're tracking, like say training or administration. They can, if they want to track it separately, you can create an internal account and then all the log time will go to that. So that's like another way. And as you see, Tempo offers you a couple of different ways of handling that whole situation. So no matter what way you're using it, you can create reports on those issues. Say if you want to find out how many sick or vacation days that have been logged across the company, it's very easy to do that. So almost done here. One more thing is back in the settings, and that is to figure out the working days. So this is basically, this defines the capacity for each employee. So we have workload schemes here. The Tempo default one, everybody's added to it by default. It's 8 hours a day, Monday to Friday, but if that doesn't work for you, you can easily edit it to like say 7 hours every day or whatever, or create your new one and make it as the default one. It's up to you. And you can have like separate workload schemes, like say for contract work, part-time work. The important thing is that the correct people are added to the correct scheme, because only employees can only be in one workload scheme at a time because of it's figuring out your capacity. So, and related to that are the holiday schemes. So these define the public holidays for each country or planet, as we have here. So if you have offices in different locations, you would need to create a holiday scheme for each one and make sure again that the correct people are added to the correct scheme. I'll just take a peek at the Earth holiday scheme. So this one is our Japanese office. So you have all of these holidays, and they're actually subtracted from the required working hours that we saw in the workload scheme. So when you have that, it gives you the resulting number of days that are considered the working capacity for each employee. And one more thing to note is that holiday schemes are not meant for vacation days or personal time off, and that should be done with the internal issues that I just showed you. So that was a lot. There's a lot of things to consider when you're setting up. So as you see, there's a lot of flexibility that Tempo gives you when you're setting up, but you should always know what you're trying to get out of it and how your organization can best use Tempo for managing your log time. So I will hand it back to Dua now, who will go into some tracking time.
Now, for some of you, you might be hearing objections from your teams about the requirement to track time. It's a change and nobody likes change. But for those people, we do recommend that you, again, over-communicate the reason why you're tracking time as an organization, but also you can show them how easy it is to track and log time with Tempo. We're continuously adding new and improved ways to track and log time, and we're adding more automations as well. I'm going to take you quickly to the demo. So this is where I was before in the reports, and I'm actually going to go back to the timesheet here view. And I'm just going to point out a few things because it's not really the purpose of the webinar, but I just want to show you really quickly. So you'll see that I have log time, which are these grayed out blocks of time here. And then I also have suggestions that are showing up on my timesheet, and they're coming from different integrations. So if I hit this filter option, you'll notice that I have suggestions on here from my Google Calendar. So any activities that are there will also show up here. They won't be logged towards my time. I have to actually commit to them by logging them. But I do get a suggestion at least. For your developers, there's suggestions that are coming from Jira Issues, Visual Studio Code. And then if I don't want to see those suggestions, maybe I like to log my time a little bit more mindfully, I can always toggle those options on and off. So I don't have to see them if I don't want to. But they're definitely a useful tool to have. Lowers the double work that you might have to do to get everything onto your timesheet. Another thing that I want to show you is, for example, if I am working within Jira Issues a lot, so if I go into one of my projects here and access one of my issues, I don't always have to move to apps and Tempo and access my timesheet to log my time. We have it built within. So if I go into logging time, if you see that, if you see it right away, you'll be able to. If not, there is a Tempo icon that you can click. And then if I click on log time, I have the log time window pop up with the issue already populated, and all I have to think about is the duration. Once I commit and I log that time, it will appear on my timesheet as well. So that's a different way. And then just the basic way of logging time. There's so many ways to do it. You can drag issues from the issue sidebar and just drop them onto your timesheet, and that will allow you to log time. Or you can simply log time through starting from scratch with finding an actual issue code and filling up the duration, which is basically what you need to log time. So there's lots of different ways, and some of the resources that we're going to share with you after today's webinar are videos that show all of these different ways to log your time. There's no right way. It's just that your users have to find the way that works best for them. And yeah, with that, I'm going to move it over to Edna again for accounts.
Thank you, Dua. Okay, so me again, but this time I'm going to be talking about accounts. And these are a Tempo-specific concept that provides a way for you to break up and aggregate your log time data for different purposes in your organization. Tempo accounts, the reasons that you might want to use them are they're often financially driven for doing things like billing or managing service contracts, or for tracking CapEx, such as for tax credits, as I noticed some of you are doing. But they could also be for doing things like setting up cost centers to track operational efficiency, or for managing internal issues, as I showed you before. The strength of Tempo accounts is that you can use them to track time spent across multiple Jira projects and multiple Jira teams. For example, you could use a single Tempo account to aggregate all the CapEx work done on developing an app by several teams over multiple Jira projects. Another superpower of Tempo accounts is that they can generate a lot of data with sort of different aspects, and that helps you run really great reports later on. For example, you can filter the log time data by the account itself, but also by the account category, by the type of the account category, or by the customer. And speaking of customers, I'll show you this example here. So this is our favorite customer, Greenergy, who has 3 different accounts here. As you can see, they have contracts that are billable, so that's kept in one account, and they have other contracts that are billable, but they're for support work. And they also have non-billable work that's like training and overhead. So later on, like I said, I could run a report on this logged customer, the time logged on this customer, and I could group the data by the account to which the time was logged. So let's go into Tempo now. And to get to accounts, I go here. So these are all the accounts that I have on my instance. And as you can see, the customer here, this is our favorite Greenergy, has a couple of accounts linked to them. And one thing is, if you don't use customers, like say for the traditional billing sense, you can still use this field as for whatever you need for your organization to help you organize things. Like, for example, I have my CapEx by year, and that's to help run reports for tax credits later on. I also have like some accounts that are related to geographic locations. So it's really up to you how you want to use this field if you don't need it for traditional things. And also the categories, as you see here, these are things that you create, again, whatever works for your company. Like I've got cost centers here. I have a development category for all of our dev work, which is often CapEx. And you see the types here. So you have a billable, operational, CapEx, and then internal, like I showed you earlier. So Tempo gives you these 4 options as types for the categories. So that's an easy way of organizing accounts that are all of the same type. So for example, I look at all my capitalized accounts right here, which is easy. So I will clear that. So let's take a look inside one of these accounts. So this is the information that when you create the account, you add all this. Everything's editable except for this one key, which is an identifier. It needs to be a unique identifier and can't change. So many companies integrate Tempo accounts into their financial systems by using matching identification numbers so that they can sort of tie their log time data from the accounts to their financial software. And as you see here, this account is linked to 4 different projects. And by linking an account to a project, it lets employees log their time to the correct account on the issues in these projects. So I'm going to open up project here. And I will go to the clone journey info because it's important to train your clones. So the account field shows up here. And this is something that your JIRA admin needs to set up for you to the JIRA issue screens. And then once you have that, any account that's linked to this project will show up here. So say if you're doing CapEx work on this issue, you would choose your CapEx account so that all the time that you have logged to this issue is immediately assigned to the account. So that's an easy way to get the correct data into the correct account. And when you do that, you get really great data for your reports, as I'm going to go here. So as Dua showed you before, it's the log time report is what you need to use for accounts. And we've got a bunch of saved ones here. I'm going to first look at the Greenergy billable accounts monthly. So here I am filtering on our customer Greenergy, and I'm looking at only their billable accounts. So you can also filter on account category or the account itself. But in this case, I just want to see the billable accounts. And later on, I can send this to my finance department, so they can use it for an invoice. So I can export it in any ways that Dua showed you before. So it's really great to see quickly also the hours that are attributed to each account. So I'll go quickly to another account, and that is this account that compares time spent, CapEx and OpEx time spent on the same our Mine app project, which is a development issue. So you can look at the totals of each here, and as you see, I've got it filtered by the 2 accounts themselves. So again, it's very great data. You have good summaries, and it's all the information that you need. And I will look at one more, and that is this one. So if you're doing a lot of CapEx work, often, like I said, categories matter a lot. So I can filter on this category, which is development, and this is a CapEx type one. So all of my apps that we've been working on all show up here, and I can easily see their totals here. And again, I can export that to my finance department, and then they can use it as a base for applying for R&D tax credits, for example. So as you see, accounts are very powerful and versatile concept in Tempo. And even if they're a bit complex, it often is worth it for you to set up the time, take the time to set it up for what you want to do across your company so that you get the best results for both your finance and your project teams. And with that, I will hand it back to Dua.
All right, thank you, Edna. So now that hopefully you've settled on Tempo Timesheets, you can extend the capabilities of your solution by adding Tempo Planner for resource planning. We've mentioned it a couple of times during the demos, and also Cost Tracker for financial cost tracking. You can also customize your setup by leveraging our complementary apps using some of the great integrations pre-built by vendors such as Adaptivist, ScriptRunner, and EasyBI. Like Amy mentioned before, we are sharing this slide deck with you. So we've included some really useful links, especially if you think integration will be part of your Tempo journey. Hitting that link will take you to some really valuable resources. Okay, so where do you go from here? Your next steps can definitely be accessing all of the resources that we're going to share with you. So again, lots of links on this slide as well to the Help Center that has a lot of details and instructions on how to specifically use our apps, including Tempo Timesheets. We've got our YouTube channel that has so many videos about how to do almost everything in Tempo Timesheets. And our blog contains a lot of success stories and content on the value of time tracking. I would also want to mention that we do have lots of really exciting sessions coming up. So I would keep an eye out on our webinars page. Again, linked on this slide, you will receive the slide deck and can access those links. And I believe we've got a couple of questions to answer. Amy, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Dua. We do have a lot of questions. So when you were talking about reports type, there's a question about how do we create the graphic on slide 11?
Okay, perfect. So yeah, let me go back to that team monthly projects report, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how you can see those graphics. So the graphics are created based on the data that you've included in the overview. So what you're looking at here, the way that you're filtering and grouping your information or your data. And to see a graph, all you have to do is go to the overview option and click on show charts. And then you can, again, play around with it if you want to look at days, weeks, months, quarters, and it just experiment with what data you've got logged in there. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. So, Mayank, are you unmuted?
I'm here.
Are there any plans to introduce more options for grouping drill down in the reporting? And this is for data center.
I don't think there's currently any plan to add more groupings. It just makes our reports more complicated. But if you have any particular group by request, please reach out to us in the idea portal. And that's where we ask for any new feature enhancements.
All right, thank you. Next one, are there any user customer groups that use Tempo Planner? I think this would do.
Sure, I can take this one. Yeah, so we do have two different products here, Tempo Timesheets, which we're addressing in this webinar. We'll have another webinar for getting started with Planner. These are two separate products, but they work hand in hand. For you to be able to plan out your work within the team and then execute on the work and see where time is being spent. So we do have a lot of customers that use the two of them together, and then you can see planned versus actual report, what actually happens, as well as a few more things. But if you only installed the trial or you already have timesheets, you do see that you can plan for yourself. But no one else is going to see that, right? So when you have the workflow of planning, when you have, an approver, when you send something to your team lead to plan, that all is in our product planner. So stay tuned. We'll be preparing another webinar for you to get started with Tempo Planner. But we do have a lot of customers that leverage the two of them together.
Thank you, Caroline. Okay, next one. Is there a way to log time in minutes, not just hours?
Yeah, for sure. So let me also, again, take you back to the demo. I'm going to take you back to the timesheet. So when you are logging time, you can, so right here, that's the default. But if you want to log it in minutes, so let's say I'm logging 15 minutes to this issue, then you can definitely do that by just including that or using fractions. So just use fractions of an hour. And I can go ahead and log that time, and it will appear as a 15-minute log time only, which is right here, onboarding and training.
And the next one is for Aetna, I believe. Where can we add account categories?
Oh, yes. That is actually, let's see if I can swipe back to Tempo. Account categories are actually in settings. So if you go way down to the bottom, you'll see them there. And here I've got a bunch of category names. So you include to a key what you want, and you can select the value. You don't have to select a value, but often it's usual, the type, say billable, and then click add, and then it shows up on your list here. So that is where you do that. Hope that answered your question.
Yep, thank you. Next one is the Excel export standard feature in Jira Cloud, or do we need a separate app for that?
So no, we actually do have the Excel export. So if I go back to reports, you've got a couple of options. I didn't go into them in too much detail because ultimately you can try them, but we've got Excel, CSV. You can even download the raw data of your report.
Awesome. All right, next one. Is it possible to schedule a task for several members at the same time?
So you would have to, again, if you're trying to plan time at a team level, you would have to have a Tempo planner to do so.
Next one. Is it possible to export the report or the tracked times in a PDF with selected field?
Yeah. So the PDF option for the export is basically what you see is what you get. So whatever you're seeing on your screen, you'll be able to export to a PDF. So as long as you manage the view, you take out any of the columns that you're not looking to see, and then export it, that's what you're going to get.
Okay, next one. So Kevin's company uses metrics on tasks to track time between development, cross-testing, and cross-development. Can time on a single task be split into subcategories?
Yep, apps that can take that. Absolutely, it can. If you use an attribute on the work log itself, which is a Tempo-specific concept, you can tag each of these work logs with exactly what it goes towards. So we have kind of two ways of doing that. Obviously, at the issue level, you can split those. But if you want to have one issue that, as Kevin's question points to, you only want to have one issue, and then the work logs themselves be specifically tied to something. It's called a work log attribute. So we have a lot in our help center about how to set that up, but absolutely you can go that way.
Do we offer an integration between Tempo Timesheet and Oracle? They maintain an Oracle dashboard for hours worked per individual and project.
So for specific integrations, we provide our Tempo APIs. So you can pull out data from Tempo and integrate them with any of the systems that you currently use. So you can absolutely do that with Oracle. We have many customers that have integrated. So check out our customer success stories on the website for more details on those examples of ones that have. But absolutely, we also have our Tempo APIs, which we can post to that question. I didn't see that question, but maybe you can, Amy. Yeah, I think there were a few questions about Tempo APIs. So that absolutely is something we'll include links to in our follow-up emails. And please provide feedback if you are just getting started with Tempo Timesheets and you're feeling a bit lost about APIs. Maybe we can do another session to help folks out with where to get started and typical use cases that we see customers get set up and running. I know like reporting is a big one. A lot of customers are pulling their data out, time tracking data out into other systems. So absolutely, you'll see some follow-up resources on that.
Right, next one. Is it possible to see percent instead of hours in any of the reports?
Okay, so one of the reports that I showed you here, I'll go back here. So this is an example of a percentage where I'm looking at utilization. So Lars here is only utilizing 17%, and this is based on how many hours he's logged versus the hours that he's required to log. Again, I'm looking at the very beginning of the month, of this current month. So if you look in the past, that hopefully that utilization will be much better. But hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, next one. Can we see report only for user story, not incidents?
You can absolutely, in your reports, you can filter, and you can filter by JQL. So this is a really powerful option for you if you just want to see something very specific, such as you just want to see, I think you said stories and not incidents and things like that. So many people don't know about this. It's kind of, it's one of our things that causes that aha light bulb moment. But basically, anything you can dream up in JQL, you can filter by in our reports. So that's something that, I can recommend to try out if you have kind of very specific needs.
Next one. When you add a Jira code to an Outlook meeting invite to help with time tracking, does this appear in the meeting invite to external attendees?
I can take that. Yes, it will. Maybe you've gotten a question about what it is, and you can tell them you guys do time tracking around it, but it will show up in the invite to everyone. That's what it looks like. I do have to say it really does help with making it very easy to track the time. So I'm sure they won't begrudge you for that, whoever the other members of the meeting are, but just so that you're aware that it will pick it up. If you do, I believe you can also put it in the invite description as well. It should pick up the issue key. Susan, am I right there? If you want it to be a little less prominent.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, that's another kind of tip or hint.
So they have a lot of data, and there's always a message popping up saying only show the first 30,000 records. What is your advice on this?
Without knowing the specific situation, it's kind of hard to troubleshoot that. I would recommend, if you have very specific questions, to use our support help desk. They're very knowledgeable, and they can take a look at your specific scenario to help you, figure out what the best way is. As you know, with time tracking, some of our customers, maybe they log time on one issue a day. Other customers may log time on 50 issues every day. So the amount of data that's being processed varies from our, different customers. And certainly, when you're loading very large reports, it can slow down. So what I would recommend is that you center your filters and your very tightly around what you need to know. And then you can also save those reports. So you can save like current quarter as a report. They showed you a lot of dynamic ways to save reports, and that way you have those you can go directly to, and you're not pulling up everything at one go. So when you first enter reports, make sure you're filtering before you just search for everything that you have access to. Absolutely, that's a best practice.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you, Edna, for being an amazing co-host. And everyone else for answering all of the questions.